Let's paint this room today. This is a primary bedroom, and we're going to change it from a dark blue and dark gray to a lighter gray color. And we're going to take you through step by step with actual footage of what we did along the way, but we'll fast forward it so that way you don't have to sit there and watch it all along and essentially watch paint dry. So we already removed all the wall plates, so the outlet covers and the switch plate covers and any vent covers have been removed. The next step is we're taping off all the baseboards. We had previously vacuumed them off and dusted them as well, so that way the tape would adhere very well. So we're just going around the room, taping off the baseboard. We like to keep a whole line of tape instead of ripping it off piece by piece. This will prove to be a good thing when you go to remove the tape. You'll see how fast the tape actually gets removed. So in this particular space, the walls are all textured. It's a knockdown texture. And we also have rounded corners on all the outside corners. So there is a hallway here we'll be doing along with the main walls of the bedroom. And it's kind of a little extra work to tape around those curved corners. They do make platinum tape. 3M makes it that you can curve around corners. But here we're just ripping off small pieces and going along to do so. On the corner that matches or meets the master bathroom area, we're going to tape off that corner. It's a curved corner with original Frogtape. The previous paint job has been here for years, and there's really no worry of pulling any paint or anything like that off when I go to remove this, and it'll only be here for the course of the day. So I'm taping that off as well with Frogtape in order to get a nice crisp line on the corner there. So the next step that we're going to be doing, as you can see here, is pole sanding the walls just to knock down any little imperfections or any areas that require just a little extra roughing up. Sometimes texture will have little bumps, or there'll be other hairs or things like that from the roller mat the last time the bedroom was painted or the walls were painted. So I got all that done, and I had also previously patched any small holes in the room. There was a TV mount behind where I am now on the blue accent wall, which once I get this paint poured and the roller going, I'm just going to spot prime that area real quick just to make sure that those bigger holes are spot primed and I don't have any texture difference or flashing when I roll out the first and second coats. So I got all the paint loaded up here with my brush, and now I can get started on cutting out the low. When I'm cutting out the low here, I'm just kind of moving along, picking a spot to get my brush loaded with paint and then moving my way around the room. I prefer to work left to right on the first coat, and then usually when I'm cutting out the second coat, I will usually go right to left. It's just a preference the way that I cut, especially when I cut in the ceiling lines. So as I move along, I'm just kind of cutting the edges of everything, cutting along the sides of the window frames, along the baseboard, and I will cut out the whole room low first, and then I will cut out the high, and then roll the whole room all at once. So the reason for this is the fact that the paint will dry very quickly after that first coat. It allows me to just kind of move along and not worry about kind of going wall to wall. But when I do the second coat, I will cut out a section, both the low and the high, and then also roll out that wall all at once, trying to make sure that everything is even and I don't get any flashing or drying between the cuts and the actual roll. But the first coat doesn't matter as much. In this room, we weren't painting the trim at all, so you may see some weird marks or things like that, or discoloration. It was just a repaint of the walls, so we didn't have any control over what the trim looked like. So painting along the edges of the trim and along the ceiling lines and things like that take a little extra effort when you have a knockdown texture. It takes a little bit more of moving the brush back and forth to work it into all the crevices of the knockdown texture. So I'm making my way around the room, and as soon as I get the low finished, I will then be able to jump onto cutting out the high. Here's a good example of having to work up and down and kind of work that in, especially on the darker blue. You can really see the difference of having to move that brush a little bit more in order to manipulate the bristles into working in all those crevices of that knockdown texture. I like to remove any items that are on the wall, even the thermostats. Usually I don't like cut around those things. You can see here where it was cut around before, and now I've got it removed. It'll make it really well covered, so that way if it ever needs to be replaced, it will be painted underneath. So on the first coat with Frogtape or on any outside corner, there's different tricks that you can use to paint this edge in order to not get any bleed through. Frogtape will react with the water in the paint and will seal up that edge. However, I don't like to take a big dip and slop it all on there. I don't want to flood that tape. I want to brush off to the side first and almost, not necessarily dry brush, but lightly go over it for this first coat. Kind of dry brushing, moving the paint up and down. That'll seal it without pushing a bunch of paint or, like I said, soaking that tape and getting in there. So that gives it a chance to react and seal up that edge. And then when I'm rolling, you can just roll right over this edge and I don't have to worry about cutting the second time. So those are the tips. Seal it down really, really well. Usually what I'll do is after I tape it, I press it down. When I come back to paint, I press it down again, make sure it's good and sealed. I don't flood it. I get my paint on there with the brush and then lightly go over it, almost dry brushing, but with enough paint to get it to flow and cover. Then when I'm rolling, I can roll right over it because it's sealed. Now let's get started cutting that high. So you can see here, I've got to work that ceiling line a little bit more, but the paint still flows pretty well. I just have to come back with the brush in a different angle in order to be able to work it into the other grooves of that knockdown texture. It takes a little practice, but once you get the hang of it, it becomes pretty easy. And you get a nice, clean, crisp line where the wall meets the ceiling. Especially on knockdown texture, it doesn't hurt to actually leave about an 1/8 of an inch, maybe 1/16 of an inch up onto the ceiling. It gives the illusion of a straight line when you're standing back from the wall and looking at it, even though the wall may curve a little bit. When you're looking at the wall from a distance, the line looks very straight. So now I'll work my way all the way around the room, cutting out the high 100%, and then I will get to rolling out the walls. One thing I always like to do when I'm cutting out the high, especially around a room, is I will make sure I'm leaving a decent cut line, or the thickness of the brush, probably 4 inches, sometimes up to 5 inches thick, Just a little extra thing that I like to do, especially because I'll be rolling out this room with an 18-inch roller setup, and just to ensure, I guess, just to make sure that I don't hit the ceiling with the roller. So I'll bring down that cut line a little bit more, just to give myself a little more coverage and not try to roll as close as I possibly can with that roller nap, and save myself the accident of hitting the ceiling. All right, now we got the roller going, and we can get these walls rolled out relatively quickly with the 18-inch roller. I'm using a Purdy Colossus roller nap with a 3/4 inch roller thickness, so it does hold a lot of paint. It is helpful to use this big of a roller, and especially with the nap thickness of 3/4 of an inch on this heavier knockdown texture. Normally, if it was a smooth level 4 finish or regular smooth walls without the texture, I would use anywhere between a 3/8 inch to a 1/2 inch nap roller, or 9/16 depending on the manufacturer. And that usually is plenty on smooth walls, but with the knockdown texture, in order to get a little bit more distance and for it to hold a little more paint, that 3/4 inch roller nap is really helpful. The other thing you'll notice is the use of an extension pole. So trying to roll out these walls with a big roller or even a smaller roller would take significantly longer and require a lot more effort if I was not using the extension pole. So using an extension pole is highly recommended and will make the job quite a bit easier and actually save you a ton of time, because you're able to roll up and down the wall with ease, with full strokes from the baseboards all the way up to the ceiling. And then once I get the whole room all rolled out here, what I like to do is turn a fan on. I usually use a box fan or a Gorilla fan. You'll see one pictured here. I usually take it and I point it perpendicular, or rather parallel to a wall, and kick the airflow around one direction of the room, and that'll help speed up the drying process in order for me to get that second coat going relatively quickly. So now I am loading up the roller again, getting it zipped up into my covered bag, so that way I can kick on the fan and it won't dry out the paint in the tray while I'm waiting for everything to dry. All right, we fast forward a little bit, and now I'm getting started on cutting out the second coat. So you'll notice here I am cutting all the low in this section, then I'll cut the high, and then I will roll out the sectional wall. So I'm doing the hallway and to the left and right of the hallway first, and then I will essentially roll out one wall at a time after I cut it. So the next wall there to the right with the window, I'll cut that whole thing, then roll it, and then move to the 3 windows in back, and then move to the last wall in order to finish up. Another tip here is I always like to bring my tray close to me as I'm rolling, and then push it along as I move down the wall. It just is a little thing, so that way I'm not walking around the room with a roller full of paint and chance having it drip someplace. You notice the blinds opening and closing. What I'm doing here, just so that way I don't have to worry about the plantation shutters, is I'm tipping them up so that way they're closed and have a smaller profile instead of having to worry about the fact that they're open as I'm working over them. I got that last wall, rolling out the final coat on that, and then as soon as that's done, I'll be able to pull the tape. And you'll notice how quickly this goes because it's all one piece all the way around the room. I don't have to worry about pulling off 3-foot sections as I go. It's all together and allows for a very quick final pull of the tape. Once I get all the tape pulled, I'll then start picking up tarps, put all the outlet and switch plate covers back on, put any vent covers back on, and clean up the whole space for a finished room. Plus you'll get a quick view here of me pulling that Frogtape on that curved outer wall or corner. And you'll see the nice crisp line that happens with that. I have a nice clean lines. The room is complete and a whole lot brighter than the dark gray and dark blue that was here before.